Hi, I'm Leslie Meredith with Breakbulk Events and Media, and I'm here this morning with our first speaker from our series of executive presentations here at Breakbulk Europe, Niklas Bengtsson from Maritime-insight. And you gave a great presentation this morning, lots of valuable information. And one thing that stuck with me was that you are seeing that the world is a better place today than it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it actually is. If you look at the economy, GDP figures are actually not that bad as we might think, because the impact from China and India has drawn the total world figures upwards. So I would say, trade-wise, it is a better place than it was just a couple of years ago. The growth has been there for many years now.
And how about looking ahead a couple of years? What are you seeing?
The problem looking ahead is not with the trade forecast. We see very decent trade forecast figures for many years going onwards, actually. There is a lot of projects that should be run and a lot of more infrastructure to be built and so on. The problem is the oversupply of ships, and mostly the container ships that will nag growth from more or less every other ship in the world.
Okay, and I know that you also talked about changes in the global energy market and the effect on the shale gas revolution in the United States. Tell us a little more about that.
Absolutely. I do not think you can overestimate the impact that the shale gas revolution have had and will have. Obviously, on the power market in the US, it has very large impact, gas versus coal, but it also has an impact on the oil consumption in the US, since you can use LNG for trucks, CNG for trucks, for trains. So it also comes into the transport market, conventionally a product market from the oil side. It also gives cheap energy, so you have invested heavily in, for instance, in the chemical industry. And that affects positively both chemical tankers and actually container carriers. And negatively the production in Europe. Since energy will be more expensive in Europe than in the US, many people tend to invest in the US today instead of in Europe. This will be a key question, not now, but in 5 years' time from the European Commission, I would say.
Good to know. Do you see Europe, certain countries such as the UK, pursuing some unconventional shale drilling?
Not in the near-time future. The environmental lobby is actually too strong for that. You can take the similarities with building a new port. Even though you have a port, you just want to extend it a little. The environmental permits always takes around 10 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. There are exceptions in the eastern part. If you do it in, for instance, Poland, it would get faster with environmental permits. And that's the answer to your first question. Is if somewhere in Europe it would be in the former eastern part, or the parts that were close to Russia previously.
And you had some insight into Russia too, and what might need to happen there to see some change, growth, infrastructure.
It's very hard to answer that question politically correct. Now, I think we have to have a better dialogue in between the Russian government and the European governments. And today that is not possible with the current leader of Russia.
It's created a lot of turmoil throughout
a lot of turmoil.
Right, throughout our industry and certainly throughout others. So I want to thank you so much for your time today and giving us your information. Very valuable.
Thank you for having me here.